Imagine you are the CFO of a massive global conglomerate,
Right.
and you are gearing up to execute this really complex cross-border netting operation across, your Asian and European subsidiaries.
Moving hundreds of millions of dollars in liquidity.
Exactly, moving massive amounts of money. And right now, you essentially have to choose between routing that through a traditional hub, like Singapore.
Which means navigating their established but, fairly heavy prudential regulations.
Yes, exactly. Or your other option is routing it through this brand new financial fortress in the Indian state of Gujarat, a place that will not charge you a single dime in business taxes for a decade.
Zero taxes.
Zero. And completely waives standard capital constraints. So today, our mission for this deep dive is to understand exactly how India is aggressively maneuvering to become, well, the world's new bank vault.
Making a very direct play to siphon corporate treasury operations right out of those established hubs.
Yeah, places like London, Dubai, and, Singapore.
Right, because we are looking at a highly coordinated structural shift here.
Yeah.
And to map this out, we pulled a stack of sources today.
Really fascinating stack, too.
Yeah, we have India's incredibly detailed April 4, 2025 regulatory circular from the IFSCA.
That's the International Financial Services Centers Authority.
Exactly. Along with their official macroeconomic promotional brochure and this really comprehensive FAQ document on setting up these offshore entities onshore.
And, we also wanted to look at the incumbent's perspective, right? So we pulled several regulatory pages from the Monetary Authority of Singapore, the MAS.
To compare the friction points.
Yeah, we were going after their digital bank framework, their latest enforcement actions, things like that. But, and this is wild, every single MAS link we hit returned a 403 forbidden error.
Or a service currently unavailable message.
Yes, the servers were literally down for maintenance.
Which is just a completely accidental but honestly perfect metaphor for this deep dive.
It really is.
I mean, the established trusted digital doors in Singapore were temporarily locked for maintenance, while India is throwing its regulatory doors wide open.
Just practically rolling out the red carpet to capture any moment of hesitation in the global markets. You try to log into the trusted system, you get an error message, but the new player on the block immediately hands you this glossy brochure.
A frictionless onboarding process.
Yeah, and total exemption from the usual red tape. Okay, let's unpack this. Because to understand the gravity of this, we really have to look at the macro numbers driving what the official brochure calls the India opportunity.
The numbers are staggering.
They really are. I mean, in the 2023 to 2024 fiscal year, India posted an 8.2% real GDP growth rate.
And they pulled in $70.09 billion in gross foreign direct investment.
Right. $70 billion. That is just a staggering velocity of capital moving into the subcontinent.
The momentum is undeniable.
Yeah.
And, they're leveraging that specific FDI influx to fuel this massive policy vision. They call it Viksit Bharat at 2047.
Which translates to developed India, right?
Yeah. Exactly. By the century mark of their independence in 2047, they project hitting a $35 trillion economy.
Wow. $35 trillion.
Yeah. But achieving that requires plugging a massive structural leak in their financial ecosystem.
Right, which is the offshore drain. Because for decades now, India has generated immense corporate wealth, but the actual, financial engineering,
The complex fund management, the derivative hedging.
yeah, the heavy lifting corporate banking, it doesn't actually happen in Mumbai or Delhi. It gets exported.
Right. Indian multinationals and even foreign companies operating in India, they routinely shift those operations to the Cayman Islands or Mauritius or Hong Kong.
Just to optimize their tax footprint.
Right.
And avoid domestic capital controls.
Exactly. So the financial intelligence and really the lucrative ecosystems that surround it are sitting in skyscrapers in Dubai, paying taxes to the UAE while managing Indian-generated wealth.
Which brings us to the core strategy. The explicit strategy detailed in the IFSCA documents revolves around GIFT City, the Gujarat International Finance Tech City.
It is an 886-acre greenfield smart city.
Built from scratch. And the stated mission in the brochure is literally onshoring the offshore. They've carved out this special economic zone where standard Indian financial rules just simply do not apply.
Completely exempt.
But, I look at this and I really wonder about the switching costs. Because building a shiny new smart city with a nice, walk-to-work riverside concept that's good optics.
It looks great in a brochure.
Right. But you and I both know a CFO isn't moving a $50 billion corporate treasury to Gujarat just for the nice office space. It's like trying to convince a wealthy digital nomad to move back into the family home by, I don't know, building them a high-tech, tax-free mansion in the backyard.
It's a great analogy.
Hubs like London and Singapore have decades of entrenched legal precedent. They have predictable courts, deep talent pools, and institutional trust. If you want to lure a massive multinational away from that, the actual hook has to be overwhelmingly mathematical. The physical city is just the hardware, right?
Exactly. The physical city is purely the hardware. The actual hook, the code that makes that hardware valuable, is the newly updated regulatory framework we see in that April 4, 2025 circular.
Okay.
Specifically, the framework governing the GRCTC.
The Global or Regional Corporate Treasury Center.
Yes.
Because this circular is essentially a blueprint for a massive regulatory arbitrage.
It is.
The document defines a finance company as an institution incorporated right there in the IFSC and a finance unit as a branch of an existing company. But the GRCTC is the specific operational designation.
It's the control room.
Right. And if you are managing cross-border liquidity right now, you know how painful the FX fees and latency can be.
Oh, it's a nightmare for these companies. According to Annex 2 of the circular, the permissible activities for a GRCTC turn it into a bespoke internal central bank for a multinational group.
Wow, an internal central bank.
Yeah, they're authorized to handle total liquidity management.
Yeah.
You have entities, pooling funds, executing complex OTC derivative transactions to hedge the parent group's exposure.
Yeah.
They're arranging credit and running sophisticated netting operations across dozens of international subsidiaries.
So just to clarify for the listener, instead of a parent company in the U.S. having to individually capitalize and, manage currency exposures for a subsidiary in Japan and then another one in Germany.
Which is incredibly inefficient.
Right. The GRCTC in GIFT City acts as the central nervous system. It processes the netting, it offsets the internal debts, and only moves the absolute minimum required capital across borders.
Neutralizing all those external transaction costs.
Exactly. Now, that level of internal velocity is standard for a top-tier treasury. But the anomaly here, the thing that really stood out, is the setup cost. I was honestly stunned by the barrier to entry in the circular.
The capitalization requirements.
Yes. Here's where it gets really interesting. To set up a finance company undertaking these massive GRCTC activities, the minimum owned fund, so the paid-up capital and free reserves, is USD 0.2 million.
$200,000.
$200,000. For the treasury center of a massive global corporation. And the operational requirement is a minimum of just 5 qualified personnel on the ground in GIFT City.
Which must include a head of treasury and a compliance officer.
Right. But still, looking at this $200 KEL minimum, it seems like India is treating this like a Silicon Valley user acquisition strategy. They are taking a loss on the upfront capital lockup just to capture the transaction volume. Am I reading that right? Why is the barrier so shockingly low?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you are reading the exact strategic intent of the IFSCA. It is a pure customer acquisition model.
Okay.
Traditional financial hubs often require massive upfront capital commitments just to establish a regulated presence.
Millions of dollars.
Usually. It acts as a filter, sure, but it also creates immense friction. India is explicitly choosing not to lock up corporate cash in stagnant reserve accounts. They want the flow.
Right, because where the flow goes, the ecosystem follows.
Precisely.
If you move your internal netting desk and your OTC derivative trading to GIFT City, you aren't just moving 5 people. Not for long, anyway. Eventually, you are pulling in the high-tier corporate lawyers.
The specialized accountants?
Yeah. The quantitative analysts, the IT infrastructure providers.
And the long-term economic multiplier of that ecosystem vastly outweighs whatever minimal yield the Indian government might have made by forcing a massive initial capital deposit.
They are playing the long game.
Very much so. They are making the onboarding process virtually frictionless to break the inertia of staying in Singapore or London.
Come build your financial central nervous system here. It won't tie up your balance sheet.
Exactly.
But, the low entry cost only gets them to look at the brochure. To actually force a corporate relocation, the ongoing operational math has to be undeniably better than the incumbent hubs.
The carrots they are dangling are aggressive.
They are. Let's look at these financial incentives, because if you are looking to optimize a global tax footprint, it's wild. The brochure leads with a 100% tax holiday on business income for 10 out of 15 years.
And it's not just the first 10 years. The entity literally chooses which 10 consecutive years out of their first 15 of operation they want to pay absolute zero on their corporate tax.
Right, and that flexibility is critical. You don't burn your tax holiday while you are, ramping up operations and your revenues are relatively low.
You wait.
Yeah, you wait until year 4 or 5 when the Treasury is really humming and processing billions in internal flow, and then you just flip the switch for a decade of zero tax drag.
Plus, there is no goods and services tax,
No GST.
no securities transaction tax, no STT, and crucially, full convertibility with 15 foreign currencies.
And notice that the Indian rupee is intentionally absent from that list of permitted currencies for offshore non-resident transactions within the SEZ.
That's a huge point.
Yeah.
The GRCTC operates entirely in hard global currencies, US dollars, euros, yen.
It creates an isolated, frictionless financial biome on Indian soil that is completely insulated from domestic currency volatility.
Capital controls.
Exactly. But to be fair, the tax breaks and the currency freedoms are honestly kind of par for the course when we talk about offshore hubs.
Sure.
I mean, the Caymans have zero corporate tax. Dubai has incredible tax incentives. The real competitive advantage, the thing that actually changes the math for a CFO, is buried in the FAQ document regarding prudential regulation.
The exemptions. The exemptions from the capital ratio and the exposure ceiling.
Yes.
This is the definitive wedge they are driving into the market.
Break this down for us, because if I am running a traditional finance company in the IFSC doing core lending, I am subject to strict safeguards, right?
Right. You have to maintain a capital ratio of 8%, meaning you're holding 8% of your risk-weighted assets back as a regulatory safety buffer.
Just locked up.
Locked up. And you also have a 25% exposure ceiling, preventing you from concentrating more than a quarter of your eligible capital base in a single counterparty.
But a GRCTC is structurally different.
Because a GRCTC is legally prohibited from accepting public deposits.
Oh.
They do everything a bank does, but they only do it with their own corporate group's money. They are not touching retail savings or pension funds. Regulators usually force capital ratios to prevent a systemic collapse from wiping out the general public.
So the FAQ explicitly states that entities undertaking only GRCTC activities are entirely exempt from the 8% capital ratio and the 25% exposure ceiling.
Entirely exempt.
That completely changes the mathematical reality for a corporate treasury. I mean, think about it. If I have $1 billion flowing through my internal network, a traditional regulator might force me to buffer 80 million of that just to satisfy a retail-focused safety model. But here, the restrictor plates are completely off.
The removal of that prudential drag allows a multinational to achieve maximum capital efficiency. You can lend your own money to your own subsidiaries at whatever concentration you deem strategically necessary without arbitrarily locking up liquidity. Over a decade, when you combine a 100% tax holiday with the ability to compound an extra 8% of your liquidity that isn't trapped in a regulatory buffer,
The compounding effect is massive.
it's an irresistible math equation.
It is. But look, a purely frictionless system with no capital buffers and total currency convertibility is also like the exact recipe for a massive money laundering vulnerability.
Oh, absolutely.
Regulators in London and Singapore, they justify their friction by pointing to their pristine reputations. If Gift City is going to rival them, they can't just be the Wild West.
And the IFSCA is acutely aware of that reputational risk. A single catastrophic laundering scandal originating from a GRCTC in Gift City would permanently validate all the critics who claim India's regulatory framework lacks maturity.
Right.
So they're building an impenetrable moat of integrity around these financial carrots, and you see it clearly in Annex I of the circular.
The fit and proper criteria.
Yeah.
And this is the stick, right? It is a brutal filtering mechanism. We looked at the fees, a $1,000 application fee, a $12,500 registration fee, and $25,000 a year recurring. That's fine. But the fit and proper rules, it's not just a standard background check. It's an exclusionary dragnet.
It really is.
They explicitly state that the parent company cannot be from a jurisdiction identified by the FATF. That's the Financial Action Task Force.
Right. If they are identified as a high-risk jurisdiction subject to a call for action.
Exactly. If you operate in a country on the global money laundering blacklist, your application is dead on arrival.
And they drill down to the individual operator level with absolute zero tolerance. To clear the fit and proper hurdle, the applicant Every key managerial personnel and anyone exercising control over the entity must have an unblemished global record.
Unblemished. The circular lists the disqualifications, and they are intense.
Yeah.
Have you ever been refused a license by any financial regulatory authority anywhere in the world?
Denied.
Have you ever defaulted on credit facilities? Denied. Are there any ongoing economic offenses, or have you been declared a fugitive economic offender?
It goes even further. Have you been declared insolvent and not discharged? Has a winding up order been passed against your previous ventures for malfeasance?
They are absolutely terrified of importing bad actors.
They are.
It's like an exclusive VIP club. Once you are inside, you don't have to wait in the normal regulatory lines. You get those exemptions from capital ratios. But the bouncer at the door is incredibly strict.
That's a perfect way to look at it. The message is clearly, we will give you unparalleled tax-free freedom to move your capital with no prudential drag, but we must be absolutely mathematically certain you are a legitimate corporate actor before you step foot in the biome.
So it creates this sort of bifurcated system. The onboarding friction is near zero from a capital perspective, 200K and 5 people. But the compliance friction at the gateway is incredibly dense.
But once you pass that fit and proper gateway, the operational friction drops back down to zero.
It's a highly calculated balance.
Meant to cultivate an elite, scandal-free ecosystem that can genuinely rival the trust levels of a Singapore or a London.
So what does this all mean? It really brings the impact of these documents right to your doorstep. If you are listening to this and you operate anywhere in the global finance supply chain,
if you analyze cross-border liquidity,
yeah, or if you optimize corporate tax structures, or if you manage treasury operations, India is no longer just a theoretical emerging market playing catch-up.
not at all.
They have engineered a bespoke regulatory weapon designed specifically to target the inefficiencies of established financial hubs.
And the structural shift is already underway. When corporate boards look at the sheer cost savings generated by a decade of zero taxes, combined with the velocity of capital unlocked by the exemption from prudential capital ratios,
The fiduciary duty to at least explore Gift City becomes undeniable.
in the next few years, we're going to see a serious migration of high-level financial engineering out of traditional hubs and into Gujarat.
Which is just a wild paradigm shift. Because for decades, the global business community has fundamentally viewed India as the back office of the world.
Right. It was the destination for outsourced IT infrastructure, customer support, basic data entry.
But with the aggressive, precise development of Gift City and the strategic brilliance of this GRCTC framework, India is actively transitioning from the back office to the bank vault of the world.
A vault that operates entirely in global hard currencies, optimizes internal corporate lending, and maximizes capital velocity.
It leaves you with a really fascinating reality to ponder. What happens to the balance of global economic power when the country that has historically managed your corporate software upgrades itself to aggressively manage your corporate treasury too?
It changes everything.
It really does. While the traditional hubs are dealing with server maintenance and legacy regulatory burdens, India has finished constructing a frictionless, tax-free fortress, and the door is wide open. Keep an eye on the flow of capital. Until next time, keep diving deep.